then, eh? All right. E tō atua, o mai kia mātou, tō maramatanga, tō rangimārie, tō araha, me tō kaha, mō tēnei rā, aki, ameni. So I've asked for peace, for love, and for strength on this day and forever. So, which is appropriate given what we're actually going through at the moment. So any apologies? I'll take it that Bruce is on his way.
But I'm here, John, if you can hear me.
You're there already. That's pretty good, Bruce.
Slight delay.
Yeah, John, the Mayor Carter said it's a long way away there. It takes a long time to connect.
He's probably quite right too.
I'm not so sure about that. Anyway, so great that you're there, Bruce. So that means we all account there's no apologies. Is that correct?
So, John, I understand there's an apology from Councillor Court.
Oh, sorry, there is, of course. We just were talking about that before. Apologies from Councillor Court.
And then have you received an apology from Councillor Radich?
No, I haven't. I did miss a phone call from him. I tried to ring him back. So he might have been ringing me to apologise, but I actually have not really received a notification. We also note that we've got Rachel who's wishes to attend, and that's great. It's open to all councillors to attend any one of the committee meetings. So thanks, Rachel. And no deputations. Previous minutes. So I'll move the previous minutes. Do I have someone to second that? And then we go.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Thanks, Bruce. And now there are some errors noted in the previous minutes. And I believe that is probably, no, that's probably, we'll go when we go into, that's in the publicly excluded minutes, I believe. So any errors noted in this public portion of the minutes?
No, Chair, but I wondered, Chair, if you wanted to extend a welcome to Casey as her first meeting.
Look, Casey, thank you very much. I did meet you in the other workshop, and I did therefore sort of slip my mind, but you're already one of the family here. But Casey comes all the way from Boston, I believe, in the US, and I'll let her introduce herself to everybody in the team. And maybe yes, and if maybe we, yep, introduce yourself, Casey, and then for those who don't know Casey, can you please introduce yourself to them? That may be the quickest way to do it. So, Casey, over to you.
Kia ora, everybody. My name is Casey Gannon. Thank you, Chair Vucic. I do come all the way from America. So Boston, Massachusetts is where I was born and raised, as you can tell in the accent. The more I talk about America, the harder the accent gets. And yeah, I've been here in Aotearoa 10 years, 3 kids later, and the far north is home. My husband comes from here, so we've settled up here and dug in our own roots with 3 boys, 8, 6, and 4. So needless to say, we're all very busy and happy that school is back in session. So happy to be here and support you guys here.
And now that your 4-year-olds turn 5.
Oh my gosh, 8, 6, and 5 now. Thank you, Aisha. Yes, 8, 6, and 5. The 3rd is now in school. So things are rolling along very seamlessly. Thank you.
So thanks, Casey. I've only been in one meeting previously before you, and it's great to actually have you here. Very friendly. So for those members who are not have not met Casey before, can you introduce yourselves, please?
Hello, Casey. I think we have met. I'm John Carter, the Mayor, and lovely to have you on board. I'm glad you didn't bring Donald Trump with you.
Hi, Casey. It's Adele Gardner. Welcome.
Hey, Casey. I'm Bruce Robertson. I'm the independent member on this committee. So lovely to meet you and look forward to seeing you in person as well.
And Deputy Chair as well. Don't forget, Bruce.
Thank you, John.
Kia ora,
All right.
Casey. Councillor Tiffany here. And I remember getting an email from you and not recognising your name and going like, who's spamming the council? Like, who's jumped in and suddenly started emailing us and having a laugh and then remembering that it was you. But I remember being in with the Democracy Services girls when you were getting interviewed, I think. So it's really cool that you're on board now.
Thank you.
Right. I think that's everybody then. Great. Thanks,
Yeah,
Will,
I've
for
already
reminding.
introduced myself previously. Sorry. Hi, Casey. Again.
Yep. So thanks, Will, for reminding me. So the previous minutes, there's been no corrections to the minutes. We've got a mover and a seconder. I'll put it to the vote. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. When it gets to some more of the other items, I might just go through the list so that we don't miss anybody out. We have on page 16 of your minutes, whether you're online or not, whatever it be, we actually have, let's bring that up so I can see it. I printed out some things. We have the NZ, we have a report to New Zealand Audit. Can I have a move and a seconder for that? And then I'll
move it, John.
start. Thanks,
I'll
Bruce.
second.
Thanks, Kelly.
Through you, Chair, I wonder if I could ask Casey if she could put it up on screen just so that we can, have a look through it.
Yep. Just while that's happening, I've had, as Chair, I've had a bit of a discussion with the staff and said, it looks great. The report looks good. There's no nothing in there, but as elected members or as committee members of this committee, we'll be giving this assurance, and I'll probably be signing it in discussion with my deputy. Thanks, Bruce. Seeking advice, you're always great. What I've requested is a letter from staff who intimately know what's going on and they're following through this, to give assurance to the committee that the response is accurate and correct to the best of their knowledge, which they have done. And then that puts us in a position as elected members to then have that confidence to say and approve the response to Audit New Zealand. Can I hand over maybe Bruce, maybe you next, and then anybody else wishes to speak? I've got on my right-hand side another screen which will show chat. So if anyone does want to speak, just type a note in the chat or raise their hand. I've got one hand raised from Mike Edmonds. So Bruce, you first, and then Mike.
Thank you, John. Look, I'm very happy to move the motion. And look, this is standard from Audit New Zealand. In fact, from any auditor to ask us as elected members, John, to really assert to them that we are aware of fraud, we have policies in place, and that we have a fair chance of detecting any fraud. And I thought the paper was quite effective as far as that's concerned. Look, the only thing I've done which is sow the seed in your mind that at the point that we would normally sign off on this, which yes, I think should come clearly, well, they will expect it to be signed off by the chair. There's a back-to-back representation from management that indeed the policies have been in place. Reasonably standard, reasonably simple, but I think just complete this. But having said that, looking at actually the very good paper, the reason I'm happy to move it is two things. Or perhaps three things, two things really. One is a suite of good policies, and thank you for was it you, Jamie, that told me that we've got them up to date, more or less, or that we've got them scheduled for renewing. And I think that's really important that the committee keeps that up to speed. So that's really superb. And also just a sort of a sense of compliment to staff, particularly you, Will, when we had the one item that you mentioned there about Conher, where certainly as deputy, and I'm sure John as chair, you informed us, and again, as I've been aware, you have also informed the auditor. So it does say that naturally it's going to be management is going to be in the best position using these policies to detect it. It's important that obviously there be the communication. So so well done, and thank you again for keeping me in the loop at contemporaneous or at the same time that really the matter had occurred, and indeed that you've also kept the auditor informed. So look, with that, John, I think other than it's good for us to be reminded what we have to have in play to minimise the risk of fraud. Great that we've got it. Great we've got a plan to do it, and we're working at it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, John. While it's not the subject of this report, it is here. So, and Bruce mentioned it, and that's the list of policies. Now, if you have a look at them, they range from policies that they would definitely require governance oversight in high risk areas. For example, procurement policy, fraud, corruption, and whistleblower policy. And then you've got others right down the other end. For example, dress code policy, possibly even overtime time and lieu policy. That probably don't need governance insight, but I don't see, I haven't up until now seen any strategy for identifying which ones come to governance for oversight and approval and input, even though the idea of policy is one that is retained, or the ability to inform policy is retained by governance. So I guess the question is there some kind of continuum here that these things sit on that guides everybody as to whether or not they come to the council for input?
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to do two things there, Mike. I'm actually going to ask Will and picking up on what Bruce said, to respond to the policies that we actually have, because Bruce did make reference to policies that he wanted to be clear on, and it's really that. And that question related to, do we have current policies that can deal specifically with fraud? I'm going to ask Will, and he can direct Jamie or whoever else he wants to respond to that. But to cover your other part of your question there, Mike, policies in general, I'm going to actually ask Rachel, because we did have that discussion, if you don't mind. You've got speaking rights, by the way, Rachel. I hope you don't mind me asking you to cover what went on in the strategy and policy meeting regarding policies. Will.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll kick it off. First of all, can I thank Bruce for his kind comments. One of the things I've always held very dear is that a huge amount of respect for the governance part of any democratic institution. And part of that, there are rights and responsibilities. That you have a lot of responsibilities, but that has to be balanced by rights. And one of those rights is, John, you as the chair and Bruce as the deputy chair needs to be informed as soon as anything major has occurred or might have occurred. And that's why I always work very hard to ensure that you're in the loop right from the get-go. When it comes to policies in terms of combating fraud, this is not like climbing Mount Everest. We'll never get to the summit. We will never get there, because, to be honest, there are sharper minds even than our own that are out there, nefarious minds that are looking for scams and tricks and ways to penetrate everything that we do. This is a challenge that every organisation faces, and that's why we go into this with a lot of humility, and that we're always looking to examine best practice from elsewhere. What else can we do to help keep the council protected? And today, we've got a pretty good track record, but we certainly wouldn't be resting on our laurels. The instruction that I gave Jamie and Tanya and Janice and all the other team and the IT team as well is examine best practice, attend webinars, attend conferences, read the latest papers, and try and implement those policies. Jamie, would you want to add anything, or Janice?
Through the chair, just to follow on from what Will said, what the paper does is demonstrate that we need to take a whole of council approach to fraud, and that's why you have a response that has that continuum that Chair Edmonds talked about in terms of the reporting on things that are very much governance issues, right through to things that are operational, and it's that comprehensive approach that's the strength of an active fraud approach. I think the question about what we report to at a governance level is on that continuum, and it really is down to the risk and the situations that we're dealing with. So there's some things that obviously come to the committee and to council because they're squarely governance related. There are some that are clearly management. There are some that are in the middle, and it really does depend on the context. And obviously, there's an ongoing conversation that we have with elected members about the things that we report through to this committee.
Thank you, Jamie. Now, Rachel, in our previous meetings, there was a workshop looking at policies. So that the other part of that question, Mike, is what should be coming to council and what shouldn't be in policies. I think very quickly, do you want to comment on that, Rachel?
Yeah, just really quickly, Councillor Vucic, and thank you for the opportunity. I think that this paper and our workshop that we had through strategy and policy yesterday is a really good example of those, and just the crossovers between departments and the need for the whole of council approach. Off the top of my head, I can't identify from this list which ones were on the work program that Daryl referred to yesterday, but there is definitely the identification of a more strategic approach needed to the way we write policies. Clearly, this is just the fraudulent side of things, though, and as Will touched on, that is a huge suite that is continuously being reviewed. Mike, I think it's a really valid question, though, and perhaps offline, I'm more than happy to send you through the work program of the policies that I've got, and you can have a look and we can continue this conversation if you like.
Thank you. Any other questions or concerns? Kelly, I should be looking at my.
Councillor Vucic, yeah, you're not looking at your chat. So I just wanted to support the recommendation and reflect on last year, where last year it was just sort of a audit risk, assurance, risk and finance, you approved this, but I'm pleased that there's been some conversation in the background between the chair and the deputy chair on what the response will be and how we'll respond. I do want to point out that most organisations have internal policies that governance don't have say on. The policy that we as audit, assurance, risk and finance have good control over, and we adopted last year, is the risk management policy, which does refer to a number of tools that we can tweak to give governance over those internal policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other from any other member? And then I think Sean, you've got your hand up. Any other comments from other members? And then I'll go to Sean.
Just to comment on governance and management around these things. This report's a really good example of the sort of thing you might you might have internally asked us for, but it just so happens we've got an external audience that's deeply interested at Crown level, and all councils, as Bruce has pointed out, are being asked the same sorts of questions. From my impression, Rachel, is from the management governance point of view, as if you would be wanting us, for example, to give a list of assurances that all contribute to avoidance of fraud, and I'd expect my governance board perhaps deep dive into one or two of these to have a look at just what the quality of them was, but I certainly would hope that there'd be enough trust in the standard of work that we present to you on a regular basis to for you to be able to not need to edit any of these policies or to co-write them or to get involved in any more detail than the current discussion. Always open-minded to other impressions, but that's my expectation.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Will, is it Casey? Can I actually? You have a covering letter. Can that be put up?
Yes, Chair. If Casey can put that up. I can't take the credit or the blame for the being the wordsmith. Jamie was good enough to do that last night. But if Casey can put that up.
Yeah. So to committee members, this is the covering letter that is sent to all of us, addressed obviously to me as chair, and it's giving. It can be read out if you like, so we can all hear it. If I can ask someone to read it.
I hereby certify that to the best of our knowledge, the response to the Audit New Zealand Fraud Questionnaire, the attachment to item 5.1 on the Assurance, Risk and Finance Committee on 17th June 2020 is true and is a true and accurate record of Far North District Council's audit and risk related activities during the 2019-20 financial year. Signed off by me.
Thank you. And Sean, just picking up on your previous comment, this is the governance committee essentially remaining in its lane. Your staff have done all the work. They're following the policies. They are following also the recommendations of previous audits to ensure that it's done, and they've supplied the questions, which is rightly so. I didn't look over their shoulders to see if all that was true. This letter gives us in the committee's assurance that you've been doing it. So on that basis, I'm happy. I'm certainly happy to give approval to the response to NZ audit.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Can I just add one more comment? Sorry, Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
Just, through the work program that we've been through over the last year as well, we've received reports that give us that, what's the word? Peace of mind that all this is happening as it says it is. Like we have had the fraud report in our last meeting, and a number of other reports which reflect what is in this report that we're moving the recommendation on. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm going to put it to the vote then. So all in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Are you going to put the split up on screen?
Yeah.
I better do that. So put the split up on the screen. These are all our members. So that we make sure we don't miss anybody out. Oh, this keeps going to sleep on me. So can we go through that? You can bring it up and I'll see all the members in the list. So myself, obviously, first is I, Mayor John Carter, Bruce.
Aye.
Ian's apology. Matty is, don't know. Councillor Stratford and Councillor Tipanea.
Aye.
So apologies, Chairperson Edmonds is also a member but missing from this list.
He's not showing on there, yes. I've noticed that.
Yeah.
And Mike.
Mike. Okay.
All in favour, all done. Okay, great, that's all good. So now we go to item 6.1, and that's on page 22 for those that have got the items up. And do I have a move and a second for that?
Kelly, moving.
Thanks, Kelly. Seconder.
Yes, I'm happy to second, John.
Thanks, Bruce. And I'm going to take it as read, obviously, but can I have, well, do you want to comment first, please?
Through you, Chair, just a very brief comment, and I'll ask Jamie to fill in any gaps, but two brief comments. What we have are a list of information reports, of which this is one. The second thing to say is that our hugely talented internal audit specialist is no more in that role. she's been headhunted and poached by Damon in IT, so she's gone to a promoted post. But Jamie's worked hard this week, and we believe we've got a very good recruit to replace her. But Lisa will be a big loss, and I stress that point because if you remember, Lisa's had a crucial role in uncovering at least 2 potential frauds this year, which she's managed to stop in the tracks before they got any further. So internal audit is absolutely crucial. Could you add anything, Jamie?
Through the chair, I just wanted to acknowledge that this report is in transition. We heard last month that the committee wanted to get a little bit more information about where things are at. So please consider this the start of that transition. We provided a little bit more information, and when we have that new specialist in place, we will then go to that next phase. And we really welcome your feedback in the next couple of meetings about just whether we hit the mark with this, because this is an important report that we want to get right.
Thank you.
May I speak, Chair?
Yes. Yep.
Yes, Jamie, it was the first thing I noticed about this report, the fact that I didn't need to go back, a few meetings ago or last year to see, the information that I wanted to reflect on. It's all in there, so I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from members?
Could I just have a question, John, please?
Yeah, sure, Bruce.
So look, Jamie, again, look, I just want to reinforce Kelly. Great report. It gives me a pretty good snapshot. Always a problem with good information. You have a few questions as well, Jamie. Can I just one of the tough control tests there is number 74 in that list there, which is a legislative compliance. Not the most exciting topic in local government, but we live by statute. And I take it from the progress that the ultimate solution is that as they're out in the market, there's some systems that you can essentially purchase to help encourage legislative compliance. But I presume at the moment we have some method of already having that assurance. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be spending the money, by the way, but I'm just really wanting to question how confident are we in our current, probably highly manual, probably highly individualized assurance processes, and do we sense any level of risk which would worry us at this stage?
Through the chair, Bruce is dead right that the ultimate solution around this is that there are a number of off-the-shelf products that enable us to assure ourselves that we have compliance with the broad legislative framework for local government, and we are in conversations with a number of councils to enter into a consortium to get a good price on a product should we want to go down that track. And the reason for doing that is that there is some risk around this at the moment. We rely heavily on our subject matter experts, our GMs and managers, to be responsible for their areas. So at the moment, it is a very manual process, and it does require, just that going around the traps, tell us where things are at and the like. And so to have a much more automated system, particularly that picks up on legislative change, and ensuring that we take incorporate that is a real power of having a system to work with. And so, and in fact, I'm talking to a vendor tomorrow just to see what we can do.
Right. Chair, if I could help colour that picture in, perhaps for newer members to the council, there's a number of ways in which the professional experts pick up that intel. One of them would be formal letters from the Crown that go to the CEO. Sean would then send that out to the relevant GM. That's one method. There'd be information which would come again to the CEO from LGNZ, again which Sean would put out. That's a second method. A third method is the use of the professional bodies. So, for example, SOLGAM. And the finance bodies and the IT bodies, they in turn interpret legislation and send it out to the subject matter experts. But there's a bit of, I think, Bruce, if I can use that phrase, ad hocery which is wrapped around that, and it is very dependent on key individuals. And if you get some churn in a department, then that expertise can be lost, and it is possible that something can fall through the gaps. So hence the search for a technology solution.
Thank you. Any other members wish to comment? No. I'll mention something then on number 123. So just in a similar vein there, as Bruce did raise. So you'll notice that Audit New Zealand has picked up on a few things and made a recommendation that Council give consideration to the impact of deferred capital expenditure, which is one area that we've sort of under-delivered on. What I would like to actually say is that whatever we do, we should be aware of any recommendations that are done through audits, our internal audits and audits in New Zealand, that we don't lose sight of those too, so that they are ongoing. And also then it comes to still a bigger picture when we as councillors setting priorities, that they are not lost in terms of some of in the areas that we're working in as well. So thank you for the report. I take it there's no other comments. See none. So I'll put it to the vote. If you can bring that up again, I'll go through the list. So we'll start with I from the South, obviously. As Chair, Mayor John Carter.
Aye.
And I'm going by memory now. And Mike Edmonds, I'll go with you next. Great. And we'll just skip Matty. Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Yeah,
Deputy Chair.
Aye.
Oh, no, he's going to be last this time. Someone has to
might. Oh, there we go.
But you said aye. And of course, Mr. Tiffany. Councillor Tiffany. Aye, great. So that's unanimous again. Let's go to the next item now, which is item 6.2. And do we have a...
Kelly, I'll move.
Again, you, Kelly, great.
Yep.
I'll second.
Mayor John Carter seconded. And again, I'll take it as being read. This is a comment. Do you want to add comments, Will, again? Just a bit of an overview or not, or anything?
I'll ask Jamie on this occasion if he wants to add anything. Jamie?
This time I'm going to pass on to Tanya, the author of the report. She's in this meeting and would be best placed to speak to it.
Through the chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak to my report. This is our standard risk progress report in which we feature risk progress reports on specific risks, give you a sense of where we are tracking within the organisation on risk, and bring to your attention anything risk related. What we have here is risk reports on 2 risks as attachments: delivery of service risk and data governance risk report. And so those 2 risks are assessed as no change to the risk status, so staying neutral. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions, otherwise it's pretty much as read.
Yep. So let's go to questions. Thanks, by the way, Tanya. We've got Mike Edmonds with a hand up. I am looking at chat as well. So Mike, if you can.
Thanks, John. The data governance risk report takes me back, well, the first question takes me back to when I started getting involved in the long-term asset funding. One of the slow starts before that group ever got put in place was the problem of vocabulary. Okay, so we were all using different words to what amounted to mean different things. And once we got our words lined up, things started to flow very, very quickly. And so I come to this data governance risk thing, and I'm presented with the same problem, right? If you look online, if you look in for any definition of data governance, it's very definitely, while it's higher order, it's at a higher level than data management, it's not much higher, and it definitely falls within the realm of operations. However, just because 90% of data governance is not really governance per se, it's more operations, it doesn't mean that there aren't parts of data governance that should be addressed by a higher order body, and in terms of the audit, risk and finance. And right now I'm in the situation where I believe we've gone to one extreme, whereas data governance looks like operations, therefore it's all operations, when it's simply not. And so I will hark back to the last term where we had a data governance subcommittee, and I'd like to have a discussion, I guess, about vocabulary to figure out what data governance belongs with elected members, and what data governance, and most of it won't, and what data governance sits with senior level management or their delegatees. So that's my comment about that. It's just I'd like to get a discussion on that topic. What 10% of this belongs squarely with the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee rather than any staff?
Thanks, Mike. And before I go to you, Councillor Stratford, correct, and for the new members that may not be aware of it, we did have a data governance committee specifically to look at the audit or the risks associated with data governance, and that was very valuable. And in fact, that was one of the biggest issues that we dealt with at the early stage, as the CE would remember, and that is, where does governance fit in this, as data governance has been used mostly by internal IT people to ensure a lot of the operational stuff is certainly taken on board. I actually agree that we haven't quite finished that, Mike, if that's what you're implying as well, that process. And I don't want to go into the details on this committee just yet, but I certainly would like that discussion, whether we do it a bit of an overview now, but the detail of it needs to follow. And I've got a meeting with you tomorrow, Sean, and I'll be raising that in another batter, which does fall into the overall data governance and various things as well. So now, Councillor Stratford, you had your hand up, and then I'm going. I think Jamie wants to speak as well, if that's right. I'm not sure. He's smiling, but Councillor Stratford first, and then yes, and then Will.
Yeah. I had a comment around on page 35 on considering the work that the working group did on data governance last year, and that my understanding is it's not finished, but we've come a long way in this report that Tanya's got. A data governance policy designed to manage the creation, transformation and usage of data and information is very different to a data protection policy. So I might be misunderstanding what Member Edmonds was raising, but I think when you look at page 35, not saying you haven't read it, I'm sorry, that's how it sounds. Sorry, Mike. But there definitely is two very clear work streams, and that's the way I understand it. And my biggest issue that I wanted to raise and make sure everybody's aware is there have been a number of cyber attacks on some big companies in New Zealand, and I just want to use this opportunity to you know, maybe in committee it would be good to hear from staff, you know, some assurance that we're all backed up and there are good practices in place, although it says it in words, you know, a little bit of operational information will give me peace of mind. Thanks.
Yeah, and thanks, Councillor. I think maybe we'll discuss that a bit later. Maybe a workshop would be a good idea. Will.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to respond to those points. As you, Chair, and as Member Edmonds knows, we are blessed by having a member of staff who is a genuine expert in this area, in Guy Dutoit. He's probably the brightest button I've ever met at working in this field. In fact, he speaks the same language as you and Mike in this particular area. So you know how good he is. I've got the utmost confidence in him. However, what Mike Edmonds says, there is significant merit in it. There is a balance to be struck by what should fall under governance and what should come under management. And I think we need to offer more clarity in that regard. And I'm going to turn to Jamie now as to how we might reach that point. And it may be that a workshop is the way to do it. But just before I do that, turning to the point that Councillor Stratford makes, it relates to the point, Kelly, I was making earlier about that you are so right, and that every organisation is rightly paranoid about the theft and the hacking into its systems. And there are much brighter minds than anybody in this room, myself included, working away, scamming away, trying to hack into our systems, whether it's to hold us to ransom or whether it's to steal money directly from us. And we all need to be really on top of our game. And that means both operationally as being on top of our game, but also ensuring that you've got the confidence as governance that we're doing the job properly.
Thank you. So we've got Jamie. You want to respond? I think you referred to that, and then we've got Councillor Smith wants to make a comment as well.
Through the chair, just picking up on Member Edmonds' comment that a lot of really good work was done last triennium through that subcommittee around getting a good sense of where governance-related data governance takes place and the operational support around that. And it seems to me that what we need to do is leverage off that work so that the report that comes through here really hits the mark in terms of giving you the information and surety around the elements of this matter that sit with you. And I think that could be a mini workshop or a conversation with some key elected members that would really welcome that opportunity to do that.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick point of note, and I was refreshing my memory on my committee terms of reference this morning, and I'm aware that data governance does sit with the strategy committee in terms of the overarching framework. So I'd be keen to perhaps potentially discuss a joint workshop between the two committees to really look at how we address that overall. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. To me, it's quite clear. First, data governance was set up with as a risk perspective. When it was set up, good data governance didn't exist, and we recognised that a big risk. So we set that in process, looking at what risk was associated with there. In terms of strategy, what information do we need to keep? What information is actually critical for the organisation? I think that's very much in the strategy side of it. So I think yes, let's have that in the workshop, Jamie, whatever it be. We'll sit together as all councillors and look at that clarity there. Now, Bruce, you've had a next on the list, if I'm right.
Yeah, look, just wanting to ask a question that might be at a slightly higher level, which is Tony, just want to pick you up. You said that and you're right, as far as I can see, the residual risk on both these has remained neutral. But in reality, if the red arrow going up is correct, you're indicating that the trend is that it's under stress. You might say it's under negative watch if we were thinking about gradings and what have you. And because of COVID-19, particularly around service delivery and the threat to data, as noted as well. So I'd like to ask the question, particularly as the first risk, the service delivery one, also relates then back to the previous item where we talked about the underachievement in terms of CapEx and or rather deferred CapEx spend, which may or may not have a threat, a more fundamental threat to our ability to deliver into the future. Are we just noting here that the risk has got a negative watch, or are there actions that management are intending to take in response to this to get rid of the upward arrow?
Through the chair, would you like me to respond to that, Bruce?
Well,
Yep.
look, whoever.
Got some nods here.
Right,
Yeah.
Sorry, it's your report, so I thought I'd have a
Yes.
crack, but I've just.
In essence, we're doing both. So we stood up a fraud squad, task force, sorry, through the COVID-19 timeframe, because it was very clear from what was happening internationally and what Certs NZ was also telling us that there was an increased risk from cyber criminals and cyber attacks, and even opportunistic online scams and attacks. So we've had a cross-functional team stood up, keeping an eye and all on those types of activities, and also having specific areas of expertise they brought to that task force. And that's been very productive. There's been a couple of issues that we've been able to go in and identify and assure ourselves that we're protected from. So, we are, you know, both aspects of that, what we've done now and what we need to do in the future as well.
Yep, great. Any other comments? Mike, actually you're next, but then after Mike, any other comments, Mike?
No, Mike.
You're fine. You pulled your hand down. Sorry, you must have been answered then. Any other comments?
Oh yeah, no. The comment that I had was answered by a couple of people afterwards.
Okay, Sean, CE.
Just the comment that I wonder whether there's more potential in time for us to, take this off the risk register once we've set up proper oversight of data in our organisation. Just to remind us that data used to be a really small deal because there were just one or two devices and one or two conduits, one or two networks, and everyone was doing stuff on paper, and it was all in filing cabinets. And as we all know, that changed over time with technology until now we're largely digital and extraordinarily networked. And data governance as a movement, because it's only a recent catchphrase, right? It's only in the last year that it's really hit our ears. John Vucic can be credited with bringing it to our council. I think is that industry, commerce and public sector simultaneously agreed that all of a sudden this thing is so big, it kind of sneaked up on us. It's now so big that it needs proper oversight in the same way that data is an asset. And if the Kirikiri wastewater treatment plant is similarly an asset, you'd want governance oversight on its fitness for purpose, on its the investment in maintaining that in the out years, on when the plan is for its renewal, on whether there was adequate staffing around it with the right qualifications for us to know that it's being well looked after, and some indication of rates of failure perhaps, but you wouldn't want to get into too much more detail than that. The data is exactly the same, and I'm using here for our benefit to see whether we can envision a day when we take this off the risk register, because we simply have a regular report coming to a governance body, a regular report that says, is our data secure? Yes, and these are the 3 or 4 mechanisms by which we can assure that. Is our data reliable in terms of quality, because garbage in, garbage out and all that? What are we doing to manage the quality? If governors accept that, then that box is ticked. Is it legally compliant? That should be an easy one to handle, but there's plenty of that around around the data of large public organisations. Is it properly staffed? That's just a head count, and as Will has testified to, a qualitative assessment of our staff. And do we have a replacement program with a budget set for it? We've just gone to Office 365 and it's afforded us the Teams platform, and we think we're ahead of most councils. It's that sort of question. But my point is, if a report with those elements decided by governance, the essential elements, was routinely made to a governance entity, whether it be this one strategy or ordinary council meeting, do you think that'd get us to a place where we could stop apologising for the lack of data governance that is causing this to be on our risk register?
Yep. If I can comment to that, Sean, your point taken. where we came from, is you're correct, we didn't really have data governance, so that within itself was a risk. There wasn't much in the way of that high level view of it. But I do say though, in defence of IT, there are many elements, as Mike pointed out, that were seen as being data governance that were being covered, i.e. backup and what have you. So I take your point. And then as an ordinary asset, what are the risks facing all our assets? And I'll give you one. I actually sent one around to all of the. I don't think I sent it to you, Bruce. I apologise. But one of the biggest risks we actually have, and it's very high. In fact, it's higher than sea level rise. It's higher probability, 12% in a decade, and that is effectively an EMF pulse from our sun. So that's we 19. When was it? 20. There's been several big ones in 50 years. You usually get two of significant size, and it just missed us. We're similar to the Carrington event of 18, whatever it was, where it set telephone poles on fire. Think of a world where all your computers have gone down, your cars have gone down, your servers have gone down, your networks have gone down, and it's a pretty bad sort of situation to be in. Now, in the previous place I was in, that was identified as a risk, and we took steps to actually try and mitigate against that. Not an easy thing to do. You can't change the sun. You can't put up sunblock if you wanted to prevent it. So while I'm saying that, I'm agreeing with you, Sean, that there are things we can do that potentially can shift, if you like, the risk focus from lack of governance in this area, and it probably should do, to rather being what is the risk to our data, and it's from many sources, as well as hackers and various things else that risk our data.
Yeah, thanks.
So, but I think there's still work to do in data governance. That's the need for the workshop, and let's clarify all of that. Some of the things you raised, you said fitness for purpose, is our data fit for purpose. That's where I think elected members need to be involved, and maybe since we've got data governance, and that probably shows some confusion as well in the strategy committee. So it's probably more, is what data do we need? Is it fit for purpose? If it's not, what do we need to do? So now you're starting to talk in terms of this overall corporate strategy in terms of achieving better quality data or whatever it be. All right. Any other comments before I put it to the vote? No. Great. Thank you for the report. So I'll start with the Mayor, John Carter.
Aye.
Then I'll go to Bruce.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
I think I moved it, so yes.
Yep. And Councillor Tippanair.
Aye.
Mike Edmonds, Chair.
Yep. Aye.
And myself, aye. I think that's everybody. Is that correct? Yeah, it looks like it. Thank you. Let's go to item 6.3. Another report. Move in a second for that, please.
Kelly, I'll move.
Thank you.
Second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Janice, do you want to, I'm taking this read again, do you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Chair. This is the first quarter report since we asked Far North Holdings to report quarterly to this committee. They have addressed the issues that we fed back to them from our council meeting on the 23rd of April. So the report has far more detail than it did before. In terms of commentary, obviously I'm working from what they've given me, so there may be questions that you have that I can't answer, I might have to take away.
Yep, and just before Will speaks, I see he's got his hand up and he's going to add some more thing. I just want to know that all of the members of the committee know, I did ask Janice, again, sort of seeking assurance, and I said, Janice, does this give you assurance? The report has got enough information in there for us to actually gauge the oversight that we need of our CCO. So, and she said yes, I believe. She's nodding. And Will, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Again, as a general point around the comment you've just made there, I really wanted to thank both Janice and yourself for your your respective personal interventions around FNHL. FNHL, as you've heard me say before, I think do a tremendous job, and we're very lucky to have them. What has happened, as I've seen in the last couple of months, is that we've grown closer together as two organisations, that we understand that we both need each other. And there were a number of very good comments made about respective reputations of each other, and we've both got a role to play in that. But any council can only do that for a CCO when it feels that it understands what's going on inside the machine of the CCO. And what's been really good over the last couple of months is I feel that our elected members believe that we have got a much better oversight and something which is more fit for purpose.
Thanks, all. Members, comments, Bruce?
Yeah, thank you, John. Look, again, I've been strongly encouraging that we treat FNHL a wee bit more closely, out of no suspicion, but actually just a strong belief and practice elsewhere that they're part of the family. Their performance is ours, as indeed their risks are, and I note that we will later deal with their risks. Look, just probably one comment, which I just noticed, and one question, which I just noticed of, as could be expected, the pressure on their income, while indeed over the 9 months their asset base is slightly increased as well as their debt. So it just raises the question about the stress of having added to your asset base, but your income decreasing, which isn't commercially where you'd want to be. I think it's totally understandable in the context they face, as it does for just about almost every other business in the darn country. So I just reflect on that it's tightened, it's obvious, and I suspect some of their investments have got a bit to go before they see the right side of it. Janice, and I'm sorry because I couldn't attend the actual briefing. Do we know what is their income in advance in the balance sheet? There's about 9.5 million there, and I was just trying to go through my head what that might represent.
I believe that it is the moorings at the marina.
Okay, so they've got people who are paid up front in terms of, yeah, okay, gotcha. Brilliant. No, that's fine. So, John, maybe my comment really is that you can see the numbers showing a wee bit of the stress that they're in effect hinting at in terms of their report.
Yeah, which is what we expected, and they did signal that.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Yeah, it's Kelly.
Kelly?
It's great to have this report, and I look forward to seeing it regularly. The sale of where it says project updates, Janice, are the figures, like the sale of the Hilltop residential land, are they included in that financial report, or would that be after? Settlement may have been after the 31st of March, so perhaps the balance sheet will look different.
Through you, Chair, as the report says sold, I would have thought that would have been reflected in this report, but I can check the Farnworth Holdings and come back to you offline.
Yeah, please do.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's also a number of PGF projects that Farnworth Holdings are delivering, and they wouldn't have received all their grant funding as yet. So things will look different when those projects have all been delivered.
Yep, that'd be correct. So any other comments from anybody? John, I see Mayor Carter.
Yeah, not on this. When you finish this, can I just come on for a second?
When I finish this report.
He wants to do breaking news.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, we'll just finish this then, John, and then we'll go to the next item. You can speak. Any other comments on this item? No, I just thank you, Janice, for doing this very quickly, which is relate to this. You did mention risk, Bruce, and we are going to be getting a letter that the risk has been handled from Farnell Holdings as well. So that's been covered, elected members. So I'll put it to the vote, and then Mayor John Carter, you can then give us your breaking news or whatever it be. So I'll start with you, Mayor John Carter. Do you?
Aye.
Aye, in favour. Bruce? Bruce in favour? Yes, he's saying yes, I think there's a nod, but you're muted there, Bruce.
You're right. You muted me.
I didn't do, I'm sure I didn't do that. All right. So, Councillor Tippania, start.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
And Chair Edmonds.
Aye.
And that leaves me, which I'll say aye. Covers everybody. Right. John, do you have the floor?
Thank you, John. John, can I just ask you to pause the meeting for 2 or 3 minutes? I've just got an urgent issue that I need to address to you. I want a phone, give you a phone call. So could you just pause the meeting for 3 or 4 minutes or 2 or 3 minutes, please?
What, directly to me?
We need to
And
move
I just want to phone. I want to
an
phone you.
adjournment.
Yeah, all right. Can I move an adjournment? Do I have a seconder?
You don't
Yep.
need a mover and a seconder to adjourn. You can just declare it
Okay.
as chair that
cool.
you're going to pause for.
Declare
Yeah.
adjournment.
If you can just give us a time frame, whether it's 5 or 10 minutes.
Can we make
5
it
minutes.
5 minutes? Thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
just are we stopping the recording or does the recording continue?
We'll stop the recording.
No problem.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
All right, so we go to item 6.4 then. Move on a seconder for that.
Yes,
Sorry.
I'll move it.
6.4. Everybody back?
Yep. I'll second.
Yep. Okay. Great. All right.
I wish
Janice?
to speak.
Yeah.
Oh,
and-
Janice, go first if she likes.
Oh, well, she did. Well, actually, I should say. Yeah, go, Janice.
Thank you, Chair. This is the statement of intent for Farnell Holdings coming back to us. They have acknowledged and actioned the points that were raised at the meeting on the 23rd of April. I would recommend that this one be accepted and that we go forward working on changes that we wish to see coming from the workshop. So things around potentially asset management plans or risk or climate change, so that we can work those into the future statement of intent.
All good. Yeah, thanks, Janice. Before we go to Councillor Stratford, the board makes the statement of intent. We are here to, to receive it. That's what's on our chart. So not much else we can do. We don't write it for them. But at this stage, we can talk to them, as you said, later. So, Councillor Stratford.
You look really worried, Councillor Vucic.
No,
yes,
I
they,
know you're passionate about things, and that's great.
passionate about the statement of intent. And yes, Janice is right. I was really pleased to see a number of changes in what we first saw at our council meeting a couple months ago. And the only thing, and I will, continue over the next 9 months to work on this with, influencing who I can, is, permissions before land is sold, because much of the land that Farnell Holdings has come from ratepayers. It's been land that was acquired through whatever legislation that used to belong to the public, and I do feel strongly that those assets need to come back to council, not a set of this list of strategic properties. There aren't any. That list is we haven't seen it yet. So yeah, but I am going to support it, and it's support receiving this report. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, John, if I could just add my bit too. You know, obviously, I'm comfortable. Clearly, this has gone through a process, and I think it combined with, as we've discussed with the previous item, a higher level of engagement. That I think, you know, this we need to hold this up. They need to keep going and keep moving. I was interested in the. So a bit like Kelly, the nine months we can seek to influence things. I had just wondered on the performance targets at a slightly pointy end. I was wondering whether growth in shareholder value was quite the best measure for us, but that's neither here nor there. That's something we can look at in the future. And perhaps one of the other things that I was interested in from an LTP perspective, given some of the flexibility, was actually the cost of debt, and indeed whether there was something that was more possible, given access to LGFA, etc., that may be different. But that's for a different discussion at a later stage. Otherwise, look, I agree with Kelly. Let's get on with it and let them keep going.
Thanks, Bruce. I think
No, I didn't say that, Bruce.
Ah, sorry, I thought you did. I thought you were saying, well, by agreeing to the
That's what I heard.
Yeah, saying keep going.
Your worship, that's what you heard too.
But
yeah.
There was a bit of a glitch when you were speaking. I don't know if it was me or you, Bruce, when you said cost to debt ratio or something. I can't remember. There was a bit of a. I don't know if others said it.
Sorry, I said there. If you look at it, their cost of debt's 4.8. It's probably not. That's probably not unreasonable. I just wonder whether in fact, particularly now as councils and their subsidiaries look at treasury functions, whether there's any way that could be beneficially influenced. But that's something for, I would suggest, the LTP, not for now.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Tipanea.
Thank you, Chair Research. The only thing that I circled when I read this late at night, and it might just be pedanticism, or it might be something overlooked on page 5 of the statement of intent, page 50 of our agenda. Can somebody clarify the difference between like a council controlled organisation and a council controlled trading organisation, and should it be referred to as a CCTO, where it says, you know, where it's referred to here, decisions for which prior council approval is required? I just circled that, and then I don't know why I did, but I'm guessing it's because I thought that Far North Holdings was a CCTO, not a CCO, or does it not matter, or I don't know.
I think if someone can respond to Councillor Tipanea, Janice.
Yes, I can, Chair. In terms of the Local Government Act, they're all CCOs. So the legislation refers to CCOs, and that is what they're responding to. Some CCOs become CCTOs, but there are no specific legislative requirements attached to a CCTO under the Local Government Act, unless Bruce can point me to something different, but it does refer just to CCOs in the LGA.
That is really helpful. Thank you.
Bruce?
I think it is a CCTO. Janice, if I've got it correctly,
yeah.
I think it meets the definition of it.
I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying the legislation refers to them all as
yes,
CCOs,
right.
Which
and indeed, yeah, the accountability requirements on a CCTO and a CCO are the same. I think the only difference would be, Janice, probably under Section 7, you can't exempt the CCTO from the SOI process. We wouldn't. I'm very sceptical of that. That as a mechanism anyway, and they have to. These guys have to. The way we express our expectations. So I agree with you. The CCO, CCTO has the same thing, but they are a CCTO.
They are.
Okay.
If I might, through the chair,
yep.
John, there's only 3 such organisations in our council for Councillor Tipinia, and that's Te Ahu, the Cycleway Trust, and Far North Holdings Limited. And you'll be able to see what Bruce is saying there in terms of the contrast between 2 of them, which are plenty CCOs. They're just organisations where revenue and expenditure are really a small part of the picture. They exist for service provision and support of the community. But we're unembarrassed about Far North Holdings Limited being a limited liability company, which is registered for purposes of trading a profit for its shareholders. So it's quite a clear distinction. I defer to what our CFO is telling us about the legislation, that it's only talks about CCOs. But I'd agree with Bruce. This is, in every sense, a trading organisation under our control.
Yeah. All right. No other comments? No, all good. All right. I'll move that. Well, it's been moved. I'll put it to the vote. We should receive the report, starting at the top. Mayor Carter.
Aye.
Bruce.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Councillor Tipinia.
Aye.
Chair Mike Edmonds.
Aye.
And it's aye from me. Thank you. Let's go to the last report. It's item 6.5. And this is the Council Financial Report for the period ending 31st of May 2020. I'll move. Do I have a seconder?
Kelly.
Thanks, Councillor Stratford. Okay, Janice, do you want to give a bit of an overview of the major changes here? I'll take it as being read, but if you can give a bit of an overview, if that's okay, Will, or Will, and then and I'll open up to member comments.
Thank you, Chair. There's nothing too dissimilar actually from the April report. We have forecast forward a significant amount of roading expenditure in this report. There were various projects that were delayed both due to drought, because of the ground conditions were too dry, and then again through the COVID level 4 shutdown. So about $12 million, I think, moved forward to the next annual plan, and that's obviously reflecting in this report.
Thank you, Janice. Comments? Questions? Concerns?
Am I unmuted? I think so.
Yeah, I can hear you. Cool. Sorry, I was looking away.
Okay, awesome.
What's the screen?
This was I don't know. This is just a comment. Just noting our reforecasting on quite a few things. This was just a general comment. I would, as a matter of interest, would like to know how many of these, say, had been reforecast from, say, the previous year ahead. So when we go to looking at the long-term plan and what we would like to happen first off the bat, say, it should be those ones that we've reforecast previously across multiple years, saying, oh, why is that still going like that? And what just brought me to that was our Kaikohe streetscape upgrade, and the beautification there was the reason why I had that comment.
Thanks, Moko. I agree. Any response to Moko's concern from staff?
Jan, can you help with that one?
Well, I certainly, if I may, that particular project was aligned to the redevelopment in Kaikohe, wasn't it? So it was so it followed on from the project that was going to be delivered in Kaikohe, and therefore currently is waiting for other activity before it can be delivered.
Okay. There is Chair Mike.
That project has been on the long-term plan for some time, and the community board keeps on asking for it to be at least started or some operational expense put to design. And so it was, I mean, I guess it was a compromise for the community board to say, hey, look, you know, it might be worth looking at it with the big thing. And now that the big thing's put on hold, we're now saying it was because of the big thing. Let's put that on hold as well. I don't accept that. I think the Kaikoai appears to be put on hold and on hold and on hold forever. So we've got a bunch of stuff that's going on in Kaikoai. I don't know what it's going to take to move some people in operations and design to work with the community to deliver what the councillors have been asking for several years. But it's got to happen. So far it's beyond us and beyond me and beyond the community board. So maybe this group can you know, put their stamp on it and say, look, you've just got to deliver it.
Thank you, Councillor Tipene.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. And that was just the example that brought it up. But there's other things on this list that I don't actually know in more detail. But I would like to know if it also had been bumped across multiple years so that we can make sure that those don't continually get pushed on, I guess. Is there a methodology in council so that we can make sure we prioritise those sort of things the next time round? Or
So now I'm actually going to try and bring this back on track again, because this what we're looking at is the budget, and all for those points, and I'm being lenient. Those points are actually correct. They're good points, and they are concerns. And so bringing the focus back to the discussion on the budget. Just on that though, we in the previous committee we actually had infrastructure committee is where some of these things ought to be brought to, and the annual plan, long-term planning. They are very valid. I'm not trying to detract from any of those. I agree with them. They're very valid issues, and it's something that in strategy we are and I have raised that we ought to be looking at. So it does come in. How do we strategize that every community has got a project that's been looked at and so on, so on. And you heard me mention these before. But getting back to now this report, so specifically on the issues that exist in the report in terms of the budget. So staff do make note, Will, and others of what's been said, because I think that's something that needs to be looked at. Going back to this report, any other further comments in terms of that? I noticed that there is a fair drop in the net operating position, for example. And our capital expenditure is right down. So maybe I'll start with a comment and hopefully you get others making mention. Net operating position year to date is 48%, and the year end it's quite a bit down. And the capital expenditure also is quite a bit down. I just can't read what's saying there, but my concern is what risk we're facing here, actually, because if NZTA is providing funding and we can't meet the capital expenditure that we're expecting, and that's coming in from the NZTA share of that, not only we have the risk of non-delivery and what is the ramifications, but then we have the potential risk of not being able to we got the risk of having to carry over their funding they've allocated to the far north. And this time, these times we've got at the moment, I can't see them actually saying, yes, sir, we'll carry it over for you because of their huge costs as well they're facing. So if someone can please comment on that, I appreciate that. Any thoughts or comments from staff on that?
Andy, can you take that?
So as part of the Infrastructure Committee workshop this morning, we did have a discussion around roading carry forwards, and we heard from Greg around his plans to maximise the roading expenditure next financial year, and he was pretty confident around the carry forwards from this year into next. He also outlined to the Infrastructure Committee workshop some process improvements which would involve some streamlining some procurement and also packaging up work so that we can bulk award to bulk award to suppliers. Clearly, to maximise the procurement spend, there will need to be a blend of works going out to competitive tender, open tender for general pricing, but also some direct awards, and noting that direct award to our maintenance contractors does also support the local economy and does add to social procurement, but without an element of direct award and also competitive pricing, there will be a risk around delivery of next year's roading programme.
Right.
If I might speak to that, don't confuse Andy's work, his tone for complacency. It might have just sounded wrong. What he actually said is correct. He and I are meeting on this regularly. It's probably the biggest concern for us. The priority is to make sure that any NZTA funding, that is any projects that are susceptible to receiving the FAR, are to be executed first, because of course next year, fast approaching, is the last year of the 3-year period in which the FAR gets to be discharged. So there's no harm done yet in terms of lost subsidy, but by this time next year, we'll be looking down the barrel of it. So we were 13 months ahead of this when we started to get alarmed by it, but we will not be taking a foot off its throat. We are quite concerned. We wouldn't be so concerned if it wasn't for the flood of economic stimulus and employment opportunity funds that are coming to our region through the PGF and from other sources post-COVID to fight the recession, because many of these erode the industrial capacity that we rely on to get the works done that are in this contract. And it's hard to quantify, impossible to quantify. We don't even know what project's been awarded yet. All we're doing is trying to source capacity outside of our existing arsenal to do the marginal works that are coming under those extra funds, so that we can preserve the shopping list for the annual plan, plus the carry forwards against the existing resources that we've got. So we'll be keeping you well informed on this, because regardless of the fact that we've got an NTA, Andy and I are well aware of the fact that we're accountable for this. NTA is the team that we've got drawing drawing the carriage, if you like. They're all the horsepower for this, but they don't carry the accountability for failure. And yes, we're concerned. So you're right to point that out. It's an astute spot, and we'll be back to you with our plans on how we're going to make this work in less generic terms than Andy's he'd given you a bit of an overview on. But I want specifics. Andy will need to want specifics, and we'll keep reporting them back to you, so that you've got a very regular update on how we're going on this capital spend, and we don't end up in the 11th month with a big surprise.
Right. So thanks, Sean. I'm pleased that you are taking it seriously and you're aware of it. And the other, and I'll make mention of my other concern. We have
sorry, if I might, through the chair.
Sorry?
So may I have a second comment? I just need to add that it's not like this incompetence has occurred here. If you look at the end of the second quarter, we were tracking quite well. Then we got a double emergency on our books. Both of them drew all of our attention as strategists, managers, and above all as engineers. Those 2 and a bit months that we were distracted really do equate quite closely to this. Thank God the 2 months that we lost were not the final 2 months of the financial year, because the amount of planning that goes into the first part of the year and the execution into the last moments of the year means we might have dropped 50% of the achievement program. But we lost them instead in sort of February, March. And what we're doing here is we're actually trying to do 2 years of work in 21 months, if you like. So as long as that's also understood by governance, that this is a race to the, to mitigate damage rather than to cover a bugger, a cock up sort of thing.
Okay, thank you, Sean. We've got a Chair, Mike Evans, wants to speak, and somebody else as well. Was that
Kelly?
I can see. You can use chat. I've got the screen here. That Councillor Stratford after Mike. Thanks.
I wasn't going to, I mean, I had no intention of bringing up this today, but what the CE just mentioned, and the fact that we're in an audit, risk and finance committee meeting does make it relevant. And that is, over the last few years, there have been comments, I've made a few, about the capacity, how we've been, while I would say, and some people would say, we've been actively destroying capacity. I won't go that far here. I'll say, but we haven't been maintaining or actively improving capacity for capital works. We've been sticking with the big guys. We haven't been, letting the little guys have anything, and we haven't been, and thereby increasing this capital works capacity. And here we are, far sooner than I expected. I expected it to be a few years away yet, but here we are, right in 2020, in the middle of it, where we can't get people to do our work, and we've said it in public now. So yeah, okay. I mean, we told you so is probably the most public way we can put it. We now need to sit back and say, let's do this deliberately and increase, even if it's the small capacity through procurement policy. I know the councillors for the last 6 years have been saying local procurement, and all we've been getting is no, it's slightly more expensive. So no, here we are, we're paying for it, we're going to get a whole bunch of free money, we can't spend it and we'll lose it. That would have been well worth the extra 10% we paid over the last 6 years to do extra work and make people, or have people in business in the far north.
Thanks, Mike. I think that's some work from the strategy committee looking at how we can build local capacity. But we now have Councillor Stratford, please.
Thank you. I just want to thank Janice for the report and raise the fact that rates remissions are starting to climb. You can see a little bit of an increase as to what we would normally forecast there. And with the forecast, was it 1.9 million going to be lost each month on rates revenue? Did that factor in, the bulk lot of rating payments that the post, got stuck in the post somewhere, Janice? Do you know how much that amount was, and is it included in this actual year to date for 31st of May?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool.
Around $459,000 that was in the mail, and it was all receipted for the May transaction.
Okay.
So there were about 450 checks that were stuck in the post box.
Goodness me.
If I could just add, Kelly, that extraordinary lengths were gone to retrieve those checks. It was almost like a James Bond exercise getting them back.
Thanks, Will. And possibly touching on the the delivery again, the central government subsidies, renewals and new works, is that NZTA funding that hasn't been received yet? Why it's lower than expected?
That will be, yes, that's what I referred to at the start of the paper. A lot has been forecast out. So,
and then the development contributions income, we don't normally have anything in that box.
So that's income that's coming in on development contributions that were in play before the policy was suspended.
Okay.
So anyone who had a resource consent that attracted development contributions, when they give effect to that consent now, those contributions that remain payable. So we have continued to get some income to offset the deficit that sits on the balance sheet.
Yeah, awesome. That's all. Thank you very much, Janice.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, John. Janice, just was going to follow through on John's question about the net operating result. The forecast, if numbers are right, around about are substantially down. Well, I've got 7.6 million in my head, but it doesn't look like that. Is that still as you expected and not affecting next year's annual plan? in the sense that a decreasing result does affect your balance sheet as well. And so I'm just asking, have we anticipated all the effects as we've looked at our annual plan for 2021?
Yes, I believe we have. Because, like I say, most of the roading stuff will have already translated over to the annual plan, and that's a significant part of the 7.6 million.
Yeah. Good. That's fine. That's what I just want to check. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, I'll just make one other note. Bottom page, what is it? Page 72 of the item, and it's looking at the balance of unbudgeted expenditure, which I understand why it's there. It's actually, we've a whole bunch of things occurred with COVID and drought and so on. And so this is just more of a general comment. I do wonder whether we are assessing risk correctly, whether it resulted through long-term plans or various other things that we could have had in place, and therefore a lot of this risk, namely the water, because I do know with Kaiko in particular there's been spoken of for some time, but no real action is taken. So I just wonder how much of the 7.379 million could have been avoided as unbudgeted expenditure had we had a potential risk assessment done, or various things that were talked about or planned action. Now, when you look at the 7.3 million, you're looking at what, 10% of our rates or whatever thereabouts. I don't know, Janice would know better than I do. But just a general comment. Obviously, this has happened. We had to do the work. I'm not saying that we hadn't, but I'm just reflecting on us being a little bit better planned and with better preparation, and then therefore saying, look, risk is a very important factor in what we do. We could avoid a lot of spend if we do that work properly.
Through you, Chair, could I make just a very brief comment on that? I think I would echo your comments. Risk is a bit like an insurance policy, and there are some things that you can insure for and some that you can't. And I think, you know, obviously hindsight's a wonderful thing, but it does strike me that that we could have and should have done more on drought to prioritise that. I think it's a different ball game when it comes to the pandemic, and you know, I know that there'll be a few scientists who say, well, they foresaw it, but most of us mere mortals never envisaged anything like this in our lifetime. But I think you have got a point with drought, and it's about trying to up our game when it comes to identifying risk.
Yep, thank you. No comments. Janice.
Councillor Stratford did ask some questions around this yesterday in terms of the volume of the unbudgeted expenditure. I would just point the committee to what is on page 70. We did have an increase for the Bay of Islands Sports Development Land of 1.8 million and the Kirikiri Wastewater Infrastructure Project of 1.5 million. So that's over nearly 3.5 million of the 8.6 million. So there's two projects that have got key amounts in there that are the lion's share of that money that's unbudgeted, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yes, I did notice that. Thanks, Janice. And yes, and then you got to say, well, why was that actually done if it wasn't on a? That's what I'm saying. Why was that done if it was not on a particular strategy that we've been working to? And that wasn't, obviously COVID is something that we should have foreseen, and given that Councillor Stratford is also on Sports Northland and does have a strategy looking at overall sports. So it just sort of reiterates my concern about us following a strategy and the importance of strategy, I might add as well, that we have a solid strategy and we stick to it and we don't react.
Can I just respond to that though?
Yes, yep.
The long-term plan is also our strategy. That's our key one, and it had the sports field project in there. So yeah, that's the second time you've referred to the sports field in a strategy, Councillor Vucic, so
Yep.
it is in the LTP.
So then I'll just reiterate something else as well. Like, a strategy is great, but when you get into a project, you do budget for the initial design work and the costings and the year you're going to do it and so on. So so sure, that's there. And in this case, we're probably bringing a portion of that forward, but I'm aware of what we actually do that is not, I believe, robust or tight enough. So, but there it is. And in a time when we're facing drought and a time when we're facing COVID, it is a significant overall increase. So
Very
any
risk
other
averse council. Remember, we did that workshop with Bruce Robertson. I think I was the only one that was willing to take risks, and everyone else was very risk averse. Sorry, I'll shut up now. Excuse me, Chair.
Yep. Yeah, there's risk and risk. All right. Any other comments? No other comments? So, Mayor, we are receiving this report. So I'll start with
Aye.
Aye. Bruce.
Aye.
And I'll start Councillor Tippania this time.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
And myself as aye. Chair Edmonds.
Aye.
Aye. No, good. So what we got? So that's everybody, I believe. Leave anybody out? That's good. Unanimous. Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of the public portion. So I'll move that we go into public exclusion. Do I have a seconder for that?
I'll second that, John.
Thanks, Bruce. And
Chair, can I ask if you're willing to admit me into PX? Can you please reflect that?
yes, and I'm willing to go into PX.
Thank you.
I think we do that as well. So I'll move that Councillor Smith.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Stratford. So let's vote on both of those items. If there is a discrepancy, then make it clear. So all in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Can hear you, Dolly.
Anybody against? Please speak up. Oh, well, I think I got everybody then. We're going to public exclusion. And are we going to...
I'll stop the recording here.
Yep. Aisha, have you got time? Let me know when you're ready. Out of public exclusion.
I'll second.
Sorry, before you do so, are
Tiffany.
you confirming all decisions and discussion in the public excluded remain in the public excluded?
Yeah, at the stage, because it's a recommendation.
I'll second that.
Yep. So I'll move that, second it. So let's have votes on those two items. So everything that was done because it's a recommendation only to council, it remains publicly excluded.
Aye.
Aye. Bruce? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody missed out? Councillor Tiffany?
Aye.
Aye. Mike?
Aye.
Aye. Yep, that sounds a lot. Well, I'm getting slacking, so I must be getting tired as well.
Aye.
So we're moving now out of public exclusion. Aye from the Mayor Carter.
Aye.
Aye from Bruce. Aye from
Aye.
Bedford. Aye from
Aye. Aye.
and aye from Mike. So that brings us to the end. Thank you very much. What is the time now? Good.
2:57.
There you go, Kelly. Oh, it is, yeah, you go then.
Yeah. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te ata whae ko tātou ariki, oi karaiti me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Kelly.
I like to come
Thanks,
here
Moko.
to rail school there.
Kia ora, everybody.
Kia ora, thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, folks.
Thanks,
Great meeting.
everybody.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Well done, Ken.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. I don't
Right.
think there's anything else
Thank you,
to.
Chair.
Obviously a long day. All the best, you guys.
Just
Yep.
a very quick,
Thank you,
just a very
Chair.
quick
Thank you,
comment.
John. Thanks for chairing that.